Hey guys, there was a request on the Discord channel for things that I was hosting, just to kind of go through my setup. So I figured I'd do a quick video and just kind of show you how my setup works and some of the things that I'm hosting, and hopefully somebody maybe gets inspired. So this is my TrueNAS server. This is nothing fancy. I'm going to show you guys basically a little bit of hardware things that's going on here, and then I'll talk about some software. So this is basically the case I'm working with. Is this the one I'm looking for? It's something like this. It's this case basically with 12 hard drive bays in the front. So this one doesn't picture, but mine has three um, hot swap four 3.5-inch cages. So each one of these fans is replaced by a cage that holds four 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch hard drives. As you see, this case is absolutely monstrous. It swallows everything. I also don't have this fan bar right here, so I have even more space. So I'm just running a basic ATX setup. Show you guys what it's telling me right here. This is what I'm running right now. This motherboard is really interesting. I got this off eBay. No, I got this somewhere. Maybe Micro Center? eBay. I got it somewhere on ridiculous sale. This is like a $350 motherboard. The only reason I got it is because it's got an onboard 10 gigabit NIC. So I didn't have to run a separate card. Right now, I'm already running two cards in my PCI slots. I'm running an NVIDIA P400 for transcode, and I'm running an LSI 9200i HBA to run all the drives that I have. Um, but yeah, that motherboard I got a motherboard used for $80 and it's amazing. You'll see I'm running it i3-10105. I've got a bunch of handmade computers in my house. They all run pretty much the same processor. The more important thing isn't the processor it's running because on TrueNAS it doesn't even get used. It's the fact that all my motherboards are 10th gen or whole 10th and 11th gen CPUs, which means that if something dies in one of my computers and God forbid I need it, I can swap out parts from other computers and harvest them in order to make it work. Everything's kind of intercompatible. I originally started off with two 16 gig sticks and expanded to 16 gig more. So I'm at 64 gigs of memory right now as DDR4. You'll see that everything I'm running is just basic desktop components. I'm not running any fancy like, Dell S720s or anything. There's nothing enterprise grade here. Not because I can't have it. It's actually pretty cheap and I've had a few of them. It's because they're massively power hungry and I get no benefit for having them. To run the TrueNAS server that I'm running, which is basically just a NAS, and I'll explain that in a minute, it takes very little power. So for energy requirements and price and things like that, I ended up doing a hand build. The power supply I'm running is a basic EVGA 650 that I rescued out of the garbage. It's memory, hard drives. My hard drive array, let's talk about that real fast. Storage. I'm running three different hard drive arrays. The one is the boot drive, which of course is just a regular 128 or 256 gigabit SSD. My apps pool is just a single SSD. It's a 500 gig. This is going to get upgraded in the future with maybe a pair of 1 terabytes for failover and a mirror. My main pool, big deal, is just four terabyte Seagate Iron Wolves. It's extremely modest because I started out with no money, and I basically started out with a pair of 4 terabytes and a mirror and a single SSD. And all these SSDs are rescued, by the way. I don't even know how many hours are on this thing. I literally don't. I just got it out of the garbage for the most part. These drives are all brand new. They're all bought brand new for a reason because I didn't want them to die. Slowly, I've added hard drives in. So I started out with two 4 terabytes and a mirror, and then eventually I destroyed that pool and added another 4 terabyte in a RAID Z1, and then I did the same thing again where I destroyed that pool and added another 4 terabyte in a RAID Z1. So now it's at its current iteration where it's four wide RAID Z1. It's 45% used. Eventually, I'm going to bump. My next change is probably going to be a pair of 20s and a mirror. And if I want to go up from there, another pair of 20s. I'm not going to go RAID Z1. I'm probably just going to go mirrored pairs from this point forward all the way out. But let's talk about this drive, this system. This is what I'm running right now. I only have to say the two pools. My files is basically like my documents folder. I'm mounting that on my main hard drive, on my main computer, I mean. So I don't save anything to my main computer's hard drives. All the computers I own are connected to TrueNAS, and I'm basically just mounting an NFS share. As you can see, there's a lot of NFS shares here, and I save directly to the NAS. This way, God forbid anything happens to that computer, the files are always somewhere where they're safe. Folder for ISOs, like those are actual ISO files, Linux ISOs. My IX applications folders here. My configuration for paperless is here. I had to do something for paperless for a client actually for work, so I have them on a whole separate data set. That's a whole nother story. My SMB shares are here, and my VM storage is here. So right now I've got one VM that I just set up last night actually for a Proxmox thing that I'm doing, which is really cool. I'll talk about that later. Um, my main pool here, this has got my backup. So everything from apps is being backed up to here, this folder. So the 124 gigs is mainly this folder, and I think that's it. And my VM backup, I think, isn't. Here's my VM backup. So this VM is being backed up here. So God forbid, because this is only one drive, it dies. Um, I could always restore it from what's in big deal. This is my configs line. The only thing left in here is MB, and again, I'll talk about that in a minute. And this is real. This is actually running. My media folder, 4.4 terabytes of media. This is a photo backup from an iPhone, and this is my Proxmox backups. So the reason that you guys want to just go to apps first, and I'll talk about that. These are the apps I'm running right here. These are the only apps that I'm running locally on the hardware. So you'll see I'm running some TrueNAS apps, like I'm running Vicunja, and that's stopped because I basically use it for work, and I'm not really using it. I could probably delete it right now. File browser I've got here, but I don't use it. I use a lot of command line. Paperless I have up for a client. Like I said before, this is a work thing. I don't know if I need this anymore. I got to talk to them about that, but I want to put that somewhere else. But the thing with paperless is it's actually kind of hungry when it comes to resources, and I only have two computers, two servers that I'm working with, and this is definitely the more powerful of the two. So I decided to put that here. Running Watchtower for everything for updates. This is the endpoint for my Cloudflare tunnel. Godify alerts. So I have Godify running because Godify is my go-to alert system. So anything that happens in TrueNAS gets pushed to my Godify alerts to my phone. I am running MB on this. This is the reason I'm running MB here is because this has got the NVIDIA P400 for transcode. The other server I have does not, and there's no space for it. I'll get to that in a minute. Um, so I'm running MB here. Everything else is running somewhere else. And of course, Dozzle, if I need to see logs, I don't use and I don't like these logs. There's nothing wrong with them, but I like Dozzle more. I think it's a better logging program. So of course, the question you're probably thinking is, where's the rest of your apps? There's only MB here. How is there anything else? The answer for that is I'm actually running Proxmox. So this is my Proxmox server. This was never intended to be what it is now. And this is kind of how it happens, I think, for a lot of people. I'm no different. I wanted to play with Proxmox. I'd never played with Proxmox before, and I was like, I don't like it. I like TrueNAS. I was running everything on TrueNAS, and the big problem I was having with TrueNAS is, for anybody that's been here for longer than just Electric Eel, I go all the way back to whatever the B one was, like Beta Fish or something. I forget, but long story short, it didn't used to be Docker. It used to be Kubernetes, and the big problem that we had was they kept doing something called breaking changes, IX apps and TrueCharts. If anyone remembers those days, if you do, you're probably sitting there cursing on the other side of your screen right now because you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'll summarize this. The TLDR is that there used to be a lot of push changes from either TrueCharts or IX applications who makes TrueNAS, and when they did that, they had something called breaking changes, which means anything you had when they did the update was going to break, and you're gonna have to rebuild everything. And I don't mean that like hypothetically. I mean like literally, you're gonna have to uninstall every app you have, then reinstall it again. So I got really good with host path configuration, but even with host path, it was still a pain to do that, especially if you're running like 20 or 30 containers. That still is annoying even with host path. So um, I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to get this off. I want to get as much off of TrueNAS as I can because I just literally can't stand it anymore. This is obviously a lot better now. We're all hoping in the future that we don't have the problems that we had in the past, but I wanted to start playing with Proxmox and start doing some stuff here. So I got a small rescued out of the garbage as usual because that's kind of what I do. A Dell Optiplex like 7030 or 7060. I'll show you what that looks like so you understand. It's like this basically. It looks a lot like this except not even as fancy as this. This is even newer than what I have. But as you can see, there's not a ton of space for stuff in here. In fact, my Proxmox server is only running one thing, and that's a single 256 gigabyte SSD, I think, or maybe a 500 gig SSD drive. And because Proxmox lets you use the boot drive for other things, that talking to you, TrueNAS, I can actually use it for a bunch of stuff. So I started playing with it, and I really started liking it, and then I moved all my apps off of it. So yeah, that's yeah. So I got to do something about that. My goal is this year to make enough money in some way to save enough money to the point where I can actually build a proper server for Proxmox, either move the boot drive or buy two brand new SSDs and put them in a mirror so I don't have to worry about it dying on me. Which is why I have it back to the TrueNAS. So all these machines here, if you don't know anything about Proxmox, this is the basic dashboard. These are all the machines I'm running. So I've got some images here. So I'll tell you what these are. So my WireGuard is here. These little boxes mean it's a container, and this is pretty amazing. So I'll tell you what's on this right now. It's basically 16 gigs of memory and four CPU cores without any hyperthreading. So I'm literally just running four CPUs, single thread on 16 gigs of DDR3 and a 500 gig SSD boot drive with, again, I don't even know how many hours on it. This is what the CPU is. This is an i5 fourth gen, and it had DDR3. So if you think you need a massively powerful computer to do anything, here's the evidence that you could run just about everything off garbage. So I'm going to show you my Docker setup in a minute. But yeah, it's it's definitely pretty old and pretty crappy, and I got to do something about that. But anyway, so I'm running a mix of LXCs and VMs. So I have two VMs here, Windows 11, because I use Linux as my daily driver. I use Fedora. Every once in a while, I got to hop on Windows, and when I do, I just fire up this VM. This VM is the one that I do all my videos on. This is TrueNAS Electric Eel. So if you ever see me sharing video from TrueNAS, this is the VM that I'm actually testing on. I have a bunch of containers here. OpenVAS is basically a um, kind of an open source version of Nessus. So if you're a pen tester, you know what I'm talking about. If not, just know it's penetration. It's scanning software to look for weaknesses in systems. I use that for work. Waza is a dashboard. This is a really cool container that I found that does kind of like endpoint management for vulnerabilities. Again, if you're not a pen tester, don't worry about it. This is my WireGuard WG Easy. This is actually running my real WireGuard endpoint right now. So my WireGuard server using WG Easy is terminating here and then goes out from here to my whole network. And this is my Docker LXC. So this is where I'm actually running like all my containers that I'm going to show you in a minute. Um, this is running off 4 CPUs. I gave it 10 gigs of memory. Don't worry about the swap usage. That's what it's supposed to do. And it's got what, 50 gigs? So I'm using 30 gigs of hard drive space, which I should probably look into because it sounds a little high, but it's okay. So this is where everything is running. So let me open up Dockge and I'll show you. So I'm using Dockge to deploy everything right now. Before I was using um, Portainer, and now you kind of use a mix of both. So, okay. All right, so 34 active containers. This is what's running right now. So I have I don't even know how many I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 containers here, another 30. So I'm running 42 containers total. Now, mind you, I'm running these 34 all right now. Um, yeah, off 2.78 gigs of memory. So that's pretty incredible. I also have some remote hosts set up here, which is really cool. I'm gonna it's cool. You guys can see this. Not really worried about it, but I can actually look up Dockge on other machines, which is really cool. I'm not sure where this one is. Does this one even still exist? It does exist. I don't even know what this endpoint is. 152? Oh, this is the WG Easy one. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, so long story short is really cool is I can control other ones. So this one, 5001. Let's scroll down here. Where's WG Easy? So for example, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so down here, see where it says 1099.0.152? This means that this WG Easy container is actually running on a different Dockge node. So I have more than one node here, and this is the one that this one happens to be on. Let's say current because it's running on the screen you're seeing, and some run on my work one. So long story short, um, yeah, it's you can see some cool stuff here. So let's talk about some of the containers I'm running. You guys are going to recognize some of these things. Bazaar does subtitles, Cloudflare DDNS. I'm at a residential location, so I do not have a static IP. So my IP changes, which it does. This is the container that actually updates that. So if my IP ever changes and within 5 minutes, this is going to do an IP check. And then if it does change, it's going to update my Cloudflare DNS entry, which is really cool. Dockge, this is running. This is Dockge running remote. Dozzle, this is for my logs. This is one of the websites I host on Ghost. Flare Solver, you guys know, that's taking care of any Cloudflare issues when I talk to my trackers. Website, Godify, I run more than one instance of Godify. So the thing with running Godify is, and I'm going to tell you this, if you guys only have one or two servers, you have to run it in more than one place, and here's why. If I run Godify on this server and the server goes down, Godify is going to go down, so it won't be able to tell me it's down. So I have to basically run Godify from somewhere else and point them back at TrueNAS and Proxmox. My Godify is actually running on a work computer that's in the cloud somewhere. So I think it's on AWS right now. So I have Godify running there. This way, if my house goes, because you think, oh, we'll just run it on Proxmox and point it at TrueNAS, and then run it on TrueNAS and point it at Proxmox. That's great until my internet goes down. Then both of those machines are cut off, and Godify can't tell me that. So basically, what I'm saying is I have to run Godify outside of my house somewhere. Otherwise, if anything happens to my house, I want to know about it, and it won't work because Godify is running inside the network, inside my internet, my home internet. If my home internet goes down, or if there's a fire, anything like that, it won't be able to tell me. Jelly Seer, you guys know. This is the landing page. It's the servers at home. So if you ever go there, that's what's being hosted. Lubelogger is really cool. I did a video on this. This is basically I do all the work in my car, so this helps me keep track of all the things that's going on. Odometer readings, all the service records, all the basic upgrades, anything that I have to do is kept there. Mealy, another thing that I did, really cool. This is a self-hosted cookbook, and I did a video on this also, and it's amazing. If you guys don't use it, definitely check it out. My Nextcloud instance, Portainer. Again, I'm running both. The reason is networking in Dockge is not great, and it's actually pretty great in Portainer, so I use that for networking purposes. Prowler, Qubit, Radar, Recycler, you guys know all these things. Kuma, again, I'm running Kuma outside of my house for the same reason I'm running Godify outside of my house. If something goes down inside of my house, I need Kuma to be able to tell me, and if that thing that goes down is the internet, then Kuma can't tell me because it can't get out. This is the blog, Sonar. This is the Cloudflare tunnel endpoint. This is Umami. This is actually really cool. Can I show you guys that? I don't even know if I can. But Umami is basically the metrics page for um, all the websites, everything I have. So I'm keeping a track. Now, Umami's great because if you guys are going to the wiki or the blog, I'm not actually tracking you the way Google is. I can only see what you're doing there. I'm not using tracking cookies or frame or like hidden frames or anything like that. This is a very clean, very respectful way to just monitor traffic on your sites. So I can monitor the wiki traffic and see what the pages that are most popular are, the blog traffic, how many people are going to the landing page, things like that. Unpacker, you guys know, part of the R suite. Vault Warden, I'm running this as I do my passwords. This is Watchtower doing my updates, my WireGuard endpoint, and the wiki. So that's 34 containers right there of just basically what my setup is. Now, this is really interesting because again, I'm doing this on this remote machine. So the way it's working is everything is local. So everything is stored on this Docker LXC. This is just if you don't know what an LXC is, it's basically a container. It's not a virtual machine. It's a lot like Docker. It's a small computer that's not a full VM. So it's it's very skimpy on the resources. Again, you'll see I'm only using to run those containers basically 2% of my CPUs, which are ancient, as well as only about less than 3 gigs of memory. So I could run this LXC on a very, very meager hardware, which is one of the reasons I really love Proxmox. I love Proxmox. I can't wait to actually build a proper server for it. But so what I do here is I'll show you guys how this works. The way this is actually working is in my FS tab. This is, let me see here. Okay, let's see FS tab. Okay, this is my FS tab. FS tab it basically means, hey, what do you want me to load on boot up? So when I restart this computer, it immediately mounts two NFS shares, my media NFS share and my files. That's what it's mounting. So that's mounted locally. So the reason for that is when I do my Docker Compose stacks, for example, let's take Bazaar. You'll see it just says /config and /media. A lot of people are like, hey, why is it /media? Why isn't it like /mount /apps or /big deal media? The reason for that is I'm mounting that media locally on this machine. So I don't have to reach out to TrueNAS. I mean, it does. It reaches out via my mount, which is through an NFS share, but I'm not directly reaching out through that. And there's the reason for that is the way the mount works is this is just how I have it mounted. My remote path, for example, is mounted. So mount apps files is just mounted at files. Mount big deal media is just mounted at media. It keeps my volume mounts a lot smaller. And the good news is they're portable. So as long as, even if I was to destroy this entire Docker LXC, have to build this up from scratch again, as long as I mount these two things the exact same, I can continue to use it like this. And I could also rename them on TrueNAS and just change the mount point here on the left and keep the mount point on the right the same, and it means I don't have to change these mount points. So it just saves me from having to change my volume configuration by doing that. So long story short, the way this is actually working is everything runs here. And the other thing that runs here is my stacks directory. So let me see if I can show you guys something. All right, so this is my cron tab. Cron tab means these are the jobs that are automatically running. So every day at midnight, this container updates itself to make sure it stays recent, and it does this really cool rsync thing. So see, it says at daily it means every day this rsync command runs, and what it does is, long story short, um, it takes everything in the local stacks directory and copies it, rsyncs it, which is better than copying, to the stacks file that I have in my TrueNAS machine. So my TrueNAS machine, let's go to datasets, files. Under files, I have if you can't see, I have a dataset called a directory called stacks, and that's where it's putting it. Go back, and that's where it's putting it. Anything now, just a couple things you see here. This keeps all the permissions the same. So AVHC means basically keep the permissions the same, so it stays as 568. Use compression if you can, which speeds it up, which means the backup takes like a second or two. It's nothing because it's basically this is basically a differential backup. I'm not taking everything and overwriting it every single time. I'm only taking the differences in my stacks directory. So if nothing changes in one of my stacks, it doesn't get copied. The delete basically says, hey, if I delete something on my Dockge machine, I want to delete it on the backup. Don't leave it in the backup because then the backup gets huge. So you end up deleting a whole bunch of things and building new things. All those things that get deleted just pile up on the backup side. Now I have a ton of storage, but I still don't want it to back up, so I just delete the remote stuff. Progress will show me how fast it's going. Not that it matters because I'm not up when this is happening, but in case I was, that's where it is. And this is because I'm running webmin. So on this machine, for example, you can see this dashboard here, but I'm also running webmin. So in case I want to use and see that dashboard or just mess with the system at all, it works just like a regular machine running Ubuntu, which is what's underneath this. This is Ubuntu right there. So it's running Ubuntu. But long story short, that's my setup. And it seems very complicated, I guess, but it's very resilient, I guess. And it's really not that complicated. It's basically just TrueNAS and a bunch of NFS shares. And on Proxmox, I have this little Docker LXC, which I'm running Dockge on. And then I run Dockge just like I run Dockge anywhere else. It's very straightforward, very simple. I just build all my stuff here, save it all in this machine, and then I push it out to a remote share and a remote backup on TrueNAS over here. So that's basically how it works. This is really cool too, because you see I have multiple backups. So this machine backs itself up to my files data set, which is then again backed up to my backups data set. So I've got a bunch of again 3-2-1 backups. I also have cloud backups that pushes. Do I have that? Let me see here. See, I can show you. Yeah, so you guys will see some of my snapshots are going on here. I have replication tasks from one pool to another. I have my cloud sync task. This is going to my Google Drive. That's where it's backing up some other very important things that I have. And of course, I have my scrub tasks turned on. So yeah, that's basically my setup. In the future, this year, my goal is to start running AI locally. So if you guys are like, hey, where are you going to go now? The answer is AI. I want to start running Olama. I'm going to show you guys that right now because it's TrueNAS up. This is my next journey here, either Open Web UI or Olama. One of these two I'm going to run with custom um, AI models, and I need a 3090 to do that. So my goal is one of the clients that I have for my business, I'm going to try and get them to invest in some hardware that I'm going to run, and I'm going to run AI for them. And because they're a law firm, they need to keep all data private. Of course, it stays here. You're not going to ChatGPT where they're going to use your data to train their AI model. Anything they run is going to be run on my machine, and I'm going to try and get them to invest in hardware that I would house and that I would use and make available to them so they could run AI for their firm off my hardware. And that's a really cool way to transition. If you're somebody at home, it's like, hey, I love my TrueNAS dashboard. I love my TrueNAS machine. I really like it a lot, and I want to try to figure out how to make it into something really great. My recommendation would be start offering services. Paperless is one of those for me. When I talked before about why I'm running paperless like this is not mine. This is for a client. Basically, if they were looking for a way to index a lot of documents, they had 30,000 PDFs they needed to search. And I did a video on paperless one time, and I was like, hey, paperless allows you to search inside PDFs, which is one of the rare things that let it do that. So I'm like, man, I think they can really use this. So I pitched it to them, and they kind of liked it. They were said, yeah, no, let's try it. So I spun up an instance of paperless on my TrueNAS server. I have a Cloudflare tunnel endpoint, which terminates here. So I gave them a fully qualified domain name so they can access it from where they are. And then I created some users, and I uploaded the documents, and they kind of like it. So that's one way that you can actually monetize. I got paid for that. This is a business. This is not a friend to friend transaction. So that's why that's still running. My goal for the same company is to eventually move away from paperless into paperless coupled with full AI, so that instead of having somebody search through paperless, I'd be able to use those 30,000 or however many documents that they have and feed them into an AI model and say, hey, this is what they're looking for. Spit out a report of these things and also tell me where the documents are that you found them. So not only can I look at the AI, I can then go into paperless and back check to make sure that the answers I got were correct. So there's really cool things you can do with this. And I just hope that's inspirational for you guys. This is basically how it's running for me.